We would like to welcome you out this afternoon to the Empowering Teaching Excellence Faculty Seminar. We just had a great workshop with President Jose Bowen of Goucher College. We appreciate him being here. We did the workshop first, a little strange order. We understand the timing of the workshop. We had a few more conflicts with classes across campus and wanted the faculty seminar to be a little more broad approach to his book and all of the work that he has been doing. So a little backwards, but appreciate you being here, not only on our Logan campus, but we would like to recognize those faculty that are out across the estate also. And we hope that you have a good experience. We did an intro with President Bowen during the workshop. We are going to skip past that now and just turn the time over to him so we can get as much from him as we can.
Thank you. There's a 2-page handout. So if you had there were 2 handouts before. This is the thin one that we're going to talk about. And so if you want to write stuff down, that's great. But there it is. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about social media in this one and about where our students are and kind of broadly why I think we have to rethink how, so if this stuff here doesn't make any sense, then, you need to find an 8-year-old to help you. But the premise here is that I think our students have changed from what we had the experience of doing, certainly. And the technology has actually had a profound effect. So first of all, you're on a physical campus. That is always going to be more expensive, monumentally more expensive. So as the online stuff gets better, you're going to have to get better because the online is cheaper. And so if you're going to bring students together into a room and make them park, and you're going to heat and buy furniture and do all those kinds of things, you're going to have to add value beyond what you could just get from content online. All right? So all of the evidence tells us that that added value is faculty-student interaction. As I heard you had Dan Chambliss, he talks about relationships when he was here. His research, but also Ken Bain's research, lots and lots of research shows the same thing. 40 years from now, when I ask your students what really mattered about their education here, they always say you. Interactions with Professor X or Professor Y. They hardly ever say classes and courses and semesters, or even content. It's actually the people that matter and their relationships, and that you cared about me. You thought I could be a great poet. You thought I could be a great physicist. The Gallup-Purdue Index is another new bit of research that also shows this, that years, in terms of happiness over your lifetime, in terms of financial success over your lifetime, the thing that matters most, the single thing that matters most in a college, one professor who said, I think you're going to be great. One professor who excited you about learning, made you care about learning, that turns out to be the single most important thing, and the majority of American students don't have it. After 4 years, they can't name one professor who excited them about learning. So they could have done it online. They actually could have just done it online because all they were doing was sitting there going, right, you, write it down, right? So if you're going to be more expensive, you better be a luxury product. Even at a big state school, you're a luxury product. The luxury is the faculty interaction. Technology is here to stay, but I would encourage you to think of technology as a tool, not as a strategy. So if I said, right, remember chalk? Chalk is a technology. So if our strategy on campus was to increase the amount of chalk on campus, would we really have a good, right? Well, we'd have more chalk, but our strategy is more learning. So more learning might need more chalk, but that's not right. So don't get the goal and the tactics backwards, right? So technology you need. The question is, where do you use it? When do you use it? How do you use it? When do I really need it? And my argument is that you don't mostly need it in the classroom, right? You need it at other places, but not mostly in the classroom. And finally, learning is about change, that your real job is changing students' minds and helping them become self-regulated changers. Right? The ability to change your mind is actually what makes you smart. We are, as a society, we are massively confused about this, and technology is the cause, right? Because Siri knows more than you do, right? Siri has access to more content than in any library or any professor. And so we actually call it a smartphone, right? As if Siri were smart, right? That's how confused people are. That's actually the problem. Smart is the ability to change your mind. So we need to model that and show students that that's really what smart means. So that means you've got to help students. None of this, oh, you know, I'm indoctrinating you. No, I'm not indoctrinating you. I'm teaching you how to self-regulate, how to be skeptical, how to be able to change your own mind. Not to agree with me. That's not the point. I want you to be able to disagree with yourself. So, but again, notice how I articulated that. I'm not indoctrinating you. You don't have to agree with me. I'm going to give you those premises. But I need to be articulate about what does it mean to change your mind, to be able to understand that when you get new evidence, because you know the truth is, when you leave this place, you will have to learn new things. Because I can't actually teach you most of what you need to know, because it hasn't yet been invented. The jobs for 20 years from now, I don't know what they are. They haven't been invented yet. Your major actually doesn't matter a whole lot. Think about computer science. That's a good major, right? Except that, sorry, computer scientists, half of what you learn as a computer science major is useless in 2 years. It's like being an expert in the iPhone 1. That's kind of useful if you're going to apply that knowledge to become an expert at the iPhone 3G, which was the next one. There was no 2. Right, a student reminded me of this the other day. It's like, there was no iPhone 2. Okay, I forgot. It was like a century ago. Right? So if I can apply the knowledge and learn the next iPhone, but it's not that being an expert at the iPhone 1 is going to last me forever. So being able to be a self-regulated learner, to be able to say, you know, that's new information. I've got to change what I was doing and think about it in a new way. So my favorite example to students is, so anybody here go to the dentist, right? Anybody ever had Novocaine, like the shot that numbs your mouth? Is it useful, right? Kind of a handy thing, right? So 20 years ago in dental school, no Novocaine. So do you really want a dentist who graduated 20 years ago at the top of her class but didn't learn about Novocaine? Or somebody who was maybe a C student who then learned about Novocaine and is really good at using Novocaine now, right? So they're going to have to learn new things. So learning is really fundamentally about change. The content that you have is important, but it's not really the point of the whole thing. So some of this relates to technology. The first is that this is, what I've been talking about is really our relationship to knowledge. Right? When I was in college and you wanted to know something, you had to go to this crazy thing called an encyclopedia. Remember that? The old folks in the room, right? You had to go to the library and look at this collection of books with the numbers on them, right? The interesting thing about the encyclopedia was that it was relatively reliable. Not perfect, but relatively reliable, but also relatively scarce, right? But think about the reliability factor. There were no cat videos in the encyclopedia. There were no jokes. There was no irony, right? So compare that now with your phone. Right? Your phone has a lot more information, a lot more accurate, a lot more up-to-date. But it's mostly cat videos. So all of a sudden, the problem has changed. If I knew where the encyclopedia was in the library and I could get to it, I could probably get reasonable information about something. Now I've got a phone I carry with me all the time that is full of garbage. So actually, critical thinking, discernment, and analysis have gone up in value. Liberal arts, here we go. But professing, sorry, professing has actually gone down in value. Because Siri professes a lot, right? All those professors on Siri and on Google, there's plenty of professing going on, right? Just turn on the TV, lots of professing, right? Discernment, analysis, skepticism, all those things have become more important. So our relationship to knowledge has changed. And the speed and the pace at which new knowledge is created means that most of the learning will happen after they leave your classroom. So you're mostly teaching them how to learn for themselves. And also, we know about the brain, right? The person who does the learning, the person who does the work does the learning. You can't actually teach anybody anything. They have to learn it for themselves. All you can do is design situations where you increase the chances they're going to learn on their own, right? That's so that motivation does all the design problem, right? So maybe there's a higher chance of success. So you're thinking, okay, let me give you some examples. So this was posted on one of my Facebook for my course, one of my courses. Students were mad about this. Are you mad about this? Are you mad? This is from the News Nerd. Is this a real news site? Right? This is the whole Facebook thing with the election, right? This is a fake news site. It's irony, satire. It's not real. Don't get incensed. This is not real, right? So students don't know that. Apparently the electorate's having trouble too, right? Well, I'm right. Google just there's all this is right. So now we're going to trust Google and Facebook to sort this stuff out? No. We need to teach students that this is not a real news site because, this is important. Now, surely faculty wouldn't be this confused, right? So is this real news? So the University of Michigan hired a football coach that made $52 million, right? This is satire, people, right? This isn't, right? Any here thought this was a real news story, right? But from the comments, you'd be surprised, right? I'm outraged, right? No. Right? Not everything on the internet is true, people. This is my favorite, right? The poor police chief of Annapolis put his hand on a Bible, and he swore before the Senate that marijuana killed 37 people in Colorado on the first day of legalization. The only problem? His source, the Daily Current. Right? And this guy testified before the Congress. Oh my God. It's like, oops, sorry, I was just using the internet. Right? So it's not what you know, it's what you can learn. And so the ability to actually filter what you find on your phone is critical. Remember, 48% of students believe what they get from Google is accurate information. They don't believe they need to be skeptical about, because it was on Google. 48% of freshmen, right? Surely, though, you could trust CNN and the BBC, right? Well, it turns out that both CNN and the BBC use what's called user-generated content. That'd be friendly people like you who make shit up. And then post it online. Right, in the old days, you made it up and you would tell your family and they would laugh and that would be it. But now you can put it on the internet and then CNN might actually pick it up, or the haircut story. It's like, really? You got to be kidding me, right? Some guy in his basement made that up. So we get the point. So the nature of our relationship to knowledge has changed. Skepticism has become more important. And the good news is you're all very skeptical, which is great. The question is, how do we make your students more like you? All right? And the way that you do that is not by filling their heads full of content. It's by giving them skills and tools and a way of looking at the world that are fundamentally different. Technology has also changed our students in a really, really other radical way, and it's about social proximity. Right? The meaning of friends has truly changed forever, and it ain't going back. Right? Students do spend an inordinate amount of time talking to each other on the phone, right? The Gen X or the Gen Z, the new ones, right? On average, check their phone 100 times a day, right? So they are bringing their friends with them to campus. The world is just different for students who have been texting their whole life. And again, you now have Gen Z students in your first 2 years, and then the older students are millennials now. But your freshmen and sophomores are Gen Z, and they are different. Are you Gen Z? Are you millennial? Am I? They are. Yes. Yes. So the millennials are your juniors and seniors are technically millennials. That's what we're calling that generation. They've started saying that the age that we've now got a new generation Z, and they're interesting because they are more depressed because the country's always been at war. They're the 9/11 generation. There are some a couple of interesting books that have now starting to come out about how the Generation Z are a little bit different. But what they do share, both of these groups, but especially Gen Z, is they are connected to their phones, right? So if you don't believe me and you have a strong stomach, or maybe you have young children, ask them about dating. Remember dating? Boy meets girl, boy meets boy, whatever, in a bar. So I get a call from my 21-year-old daughter who says, Dad, I'm in this bar, and we've met some boys. And my roommate is thinking of going home with one of them, right? This is like that, doctor, my friend has a rash. It's like, your friend, huh? Yeah. So my roommate is thinking, wink, wink, of going home with one of the boys we've met. And I get this text on a Saturday night, right? Because it's not a phone call, it's a text. And I'm going, oh, what do you say, the proud pop? It's like, what? Before I can say anything, he says, don't worry, Dad. They don't have any STDs. I've checked on Hula, right? Hula was a program that tagline was literally helps you get laid, right? The good people of Hawaii objected to this, and they renamed themselves Healthvana. And you can see, right, there she is, and there's her HIV gonorrhea tests results, shared for all of you, because it avoids those awkward questions. So she tells me this is a few years ago, so some of the names of the software has changed, but so she's like, Dad, it's okay, they don't have STDs. Right, what do I say to this, right? It's like, you know, and then I'm thinking, while I'm thinking, I get another text. It says, Dad, it's okay. I think, you know what? They get great ratings on Lulu. Now, you've heard of rating apps like Fandango for movies or Yelp, right? When you go to a restaurant, you've been on Yelp. Everybody been on Yelp? So it's not like the New York Times review critic of the taco stand. It's like what Bob thought of the taco stand. And you trust Bob? Or some people who went there with the app, right? So a bunch of people who ate tacos said they liked them or they didn't like them, and that's Yelp. It's user-generated content. This is Yelp for dating. I mean, right? So Lulu, and the way this used to work, because it's now been bought by Badoo, which is the world's largest dating company. So I don't know what they're doing next. But for years, this has been the #1 mobile app for women. So all the boys on Facebook who have a Utah State, whatever your usu.edu, and they're on Facebook, Lulu sucks all that data in automatically. So all their profile pictures are there, and the girls can then talk about them and rate them. And it's way more sexually explicit than you could possibly imagine. So don't. Just don't. But notice, right? Reviews of guys, 100% anonymous. Do your research. And my favorite, if it's not here, is their tagline is, you know, oh yeah, make better decisions. I'm sorry, but I'm horrified. So you've got, right, so she says, Dad, they got great recommendations on Lulu. I'm going, okay. So are they nice? But what do you say? She says, yeah, Dad. And Dad, right, the eye rolling is like, I can see it on the phone. Says, look, we haven't actually met. We're talking on Tinder. We're texting, chatting on Tinder, which is a GPS app that tells you which boys are in the room. So when you go to a bar, you can find who are the boys in the bar, and you can use your phone to figure out who's in the bar, rather than go talk to you. So they're at the other end of the bar, right? They're like 20 feet away from each other, and they're having this conversation, and they know they don't have STDs, and they've checked the ratings, and they're doing all this. And I go, honey, those are strangers. Remember that talk we had in the second grade about you don't go home with strangers? Those are strangers. And she writes back to me, Dad, no, it's safer this way. That's what she writes back to me. It's safer. Rather than having a conversation, right? I've checked their stuff on the internet. Now let's talk about office hours. I want you to think about office hours now in this context, right? If this has been your experience with right? And my daughter would say, look, Dad, why would I, if every important person I'm going to meet in the rest of my life, I will meet online first. You've always told me, be prepared before an interview, right? If I'm going to a job interview, I Google the person I'm going to interview with, I look something up, I know. Why would I do that any differently from my in-laws or a boyfriend, right? I'm going to Google and figure out what I know about them. This is what you do. Students today are also like, I've heard this, I'll probably never meet my best friend in person. You've heard that students say that to you? That means, because I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, my best friend's in Germany. We play video games all the time, every day. I talk to him 3-4 times a day. But he lives in Germany. We play, we're on video games together. So I can't understand this. I'm too old. I'm sorry. I don't get it, right? But I can get that that's a different mentality of social proximity, right? So now you ask students to come to your office for office hours. Right? That's weird. In person? But I don't even know you. It's like, do you have STDs? I mean, should I look at that first? What do I mean, right? Can I catch something, right? And first of all, remember, your office is like the inner circle of hell, right? I mean, it's full of books. I'm allergic to books, and, right? And you're in there, and you're scary. And you have degrees I've never even heard of. I mean, that's a scary place. It's not scary to you because you live there, but it's a scary place for students. So my advice is you've got to start online. You need to have some social media presence to convince students that you're safe and that you really exist. Right? If you were going to go, like, think about it. You're 24 years old. I have a daughter in New York. You get an offer to go interview at a company. You look online. There's nothing. You should be suspicious. That's not a real company. Right? It's the same for people. I can't find you online. Maybe you're not a real person. Maybe you're some kind of predator. Right? I mean, I know it sounds cuckoo, but I think our assumptions are really that different. And again, during my day job, right, we went from helicopter parents to lawnmower parents to now we have Velcro parents, right? So, the world is different. So, okay. Students are also attached to their phone in ways that are remarkable. People ask me, what's the weirdest thing you learned as a college president? And I said, well, so students spend a lot of time on their phones. In fact, it turns out that a third of students can't use the toilet without a phone. So we have a plumber whose job it is to extract phones from the toilet. That's a job, right? The toilet phone guy. That is not the strangest thing I learned as a college president. The strangest thing I've learned? They want it back. Right? Right? Stimson is one of my dorms, right? They put it in a bag of rice and they use it again. My daughter comes home and says, Dad, look at the new waterproof case I got for my phone. Are you going scuba diving? So, all right, so now think about the student. When you want to say, hey, when you come into my class, there are no phones in my class. What, do you want a finger too? I mean, just ask me to cut off a finger, right? This is just not a realistic expectation. I'm attached to my phone. If you want to prove this to yourself, buy one of those plastic shoe racks that's see-through that you hang on the back of the door, right? And then ask your students to put their phone in the shoe rack during class. They can watch it buzz. Just can't touch it. Yeah, no, the Geneva Convention is waiting to rule on that, but you could try it. There's the data, right, if you want to know actually what they do. So this is always and often. In bed, the first thing when I wake up, 60%, first thing I do is touch my phone. Before I go to sleep, 67%. Last thing they touch. I guess it's better than the alternatives. I don't know. But when I use the restroom, there it is, 30%, can't use it without a phone, right? Here you really want to know, while driving, sorry, right? This data is actually a couple of years old, so yeah, they're connected to their phones. There's a third change that you got to be aware of. Gaming and customization have changed the world, right? That it's not just Starbucks, and you can have your coffee with a half calf macchiato, half decaf, whatever, right? It's not just that, although that is we all do that, right? We all have customized coffee now instead of just coffee, right? But think about also how credit cards work and how reward programs work, right? If you fly American Airlines, you get points. You collect points, you get prizes, right? Where did that come from? That's called gamification, right? That we've now seen our world as being gamified because it works, right? So games are really interesting because games are the model for your classrooms. First of all, video games are what students have been doing. On average, students have spent more than 10,000 hours playing video games before they get to college. That's more hours than perfect attendance in class from 6th grade through high school. They spent more hours playing video games than they have in the classroom. Now they pop up into your room, and they're going, hey, say that again. Stop, say that again. Wait, my clicker's broken. You're not stopping, right? You're still talking, right? Right? They're used to the remote that goes with everything except for you. They would love a remote for you, right? So they're used to games, but games also work, right? Because what happens when you fail at the game? Nothing. Right? You start over. You get to do it again. Game designers call this pleasantly frustrating. Because they discovered, imagine this, that nobody likes to read the textbook, I mean the manual, before you do the game. You just want to play the game, right? It's like I said, hey, I'm going to teach you how to play tennis. So we're going to pick up a racket, and we're going to go out and hit some balls, right? I'm going to teach you tennis. Here's a book, right? Read the book first, and then right? Now, who's going to win the first match, right? You have the book. You got to practice with the ball, right? So, right, students don't want to read the manual first. And again, we're weird. So we learn in a different way than other people. So gamers figured this out. The students had to be able to just start and get some success, right? You want to get the ball across the net. The first thing you want to do is so don't give me fancy stuff. Just hit the ball over the net. That's great. You're fantastic. Hit the ball. Keep going. We're good, right? So that's how games work. It's called pleasantly frustrating. If it's too hard, what do? You quit. If it's too easy, what do? You quit. You want it to be just right. Pleasantly frustrating. But what's the problem? When I'm in a tennis class or a physics class or any kind of class with a bunch of people, what do? I teach to the middle. But what happens in a video game? You're on level 1. You're on level 50. You're on level 1,000. Right? Because you're at different places. And you don't know that she's still on level 1, right? Because you're playing at level 1,000, right? It automatically adjusts to keep everybody pleasantly frustrated at once all the time. Does that make sense? Again, I've got zero experience actually playing video games, but I know the theory, and I've watched people, right? So, right, I couldn't cut hair, but I know how barbing, I kind of understand how hair cutting works, right? No. So, right, so video games work this way in that everybody's at a different level, and they're all pleasantly frustrated. And if that works, what happens? People buy more games, right? That's good. They didn't want to create a learning environment, but they did. So now students come into your class having done that for 10,000 hours each on average, where they were stimulated exactly to the right level the entire time, and now you want them to work hard. Where's my reward? Where's my motive? Right? All of that. It's a totally different kind of environment. So can we gamify our classrooms? Make our classrooms more like good video games, because the video games do have it right. Pleasantly frustrating is the zone you want everybody in. That's the zone for everybody. So how do we make that happen? So that's going to be one of our questions. All right, so let me talk a little bit about a couple of details. So the first is this idea about knowledge. So in the workshop, I had people do a little experiment. I said, so figure out what content you're doing and go Google it. I would give this as a homework for all of you. Pretend that you're 18 years old or 25 years old, or whatever it is, and you look at your syllabus and you see what's on the syllabus for next Wednesday. Google it and see what pops up. And if you're really anxious, hit the video button and see what pops up. Because that's what most students are going to do. So they are not actually going to go to the reading that you've assigned. They're going to look up Charlemagne, and the first hit is going to be, right? She calls herself history professor, right? And she has a band and actors. You can crank it up a bit. Right? I'm about to ruin this song for you forever, so cover your ears if you don't want to have it. But here it is. Right? Yeah, okay. So look. So my history, look, if you can't beat them, join them. They're going to watch that video. There's not much, right? It's entertaining. Why not? So, okay, so watch the Charlemagne video before you come to class. Find 3 mistakes. Put them on an index card. Bring it to class. All right, put your name on it. That's how I'll take attendance. What's the bias? What did she leave out? What historical evidence would you need for verse 2, right? Find some way to undermine, to subvert, to be skeptical about, because they're going to watch. You can't stop them from watching this. And as long as we're ruining songs that you love, this one is, you'll never forgive me. Just fantasy. This is string theory. I missed the first line. Touch with reality. Compactified on S5 or T-star S3. Right? Space is a pure void. Why should it be stringy? So ask yourself two questions. The first is, do you, hang on, let's see, your connection's a little bit slow. Okay, it's a little slow. The first question is, if your graduate students have this much time on their hands, you need to give them more work to do. That's absolutely true. And the other is, do you really need an Einstein sock puppet for your class? As he has, but it's not loading, so never mind. Okay, let me get rid of that. So one thing, but notice that there are lots of these things. There's a whole website dedicated just to little simulations, right? Students can download. A lot of this content is very good content. Suppose your students found this, right? Why would they go to your lecture on the nervous system when I have this?
What if everything you did, and thought, and felt could be communicated by pushing a button? It'd be like using the world's simplest app, one that just sends out a little ping, always at the same volume and length, to communicate everything from "it sure is cold in here" to "I love churros" to "boy, I sure would like to breathe sometime soon." Well, that is actually exactly how your neurons send all the impulses responsible for every one of your actions, thoughts, and emotions. When a neuron is stimulated enough, it fires an electric.
So look, he's young, he talks fast, he has animation, right? I mean, look at the production value of this. It's also only 11 minutes. So this is attractive content, right? Is your lecture this good? If you're going to lecture, this is the competition, and they can watch this in their underwear, right? At home, and not have to walk across the campus or pay for parking. So right, the content delivery piece is actually available out there. And so the interesting thing is, that's pretty good content. By the way, the Khan and this is called Crash Course. Both of them have gotten millions of dollars from Bill Gates, which is why the content is so pretty, right? And attractive. And attractive is part of the motivation, which is part of what students are interested in. So you've got all sorts of content here online. Some of it good, some of it not so good. So my strategy for you is that you have to understand this. Now, you can either say, hey, look, here's a great short lecture on the nervous system, or go to Mr. Khan or whatever, and that's fine, and I won't do that. Or you can let the students find what they're going to find, which is probably going to be crap, and help them learn to be skeptical and subvert that, because ultimately, you're not going to be looking over their shoulder going, this is a good video on the nervous system, and that is just some guy in his underwear, right? They need to be able to make that distinction themselves. So part of me says that textbooks are part of the problem, that we need to let this be messier and let students actually live in the mess and say, well, did you find, your video was crap, and she watched a good video, which is why she learned more, right? I mean, maybe we need to allow that. But again, I'll leave that up to you in terms of strategy. But there's a couple of things about this that are interesting. The internet is also more multivalent than most of us, right? So let's see if I can find, what did I do? Oh, I'm not kidding. Okay, so I'm having, so there are, I'm going to have, let me see if I hope this one pops up. Where's that one? Okay, so I'm on my connection's a little slow is my problem. I'm going to ask it to do this again. Great. Okay. Yeah, so I've somehow lost the internet. Okay. So there are also there are also sites in other languages, right? In Spanish, for example, most popular Universidades, I didn't get to pull it up, but is again a Spanish academic site. So maybe your physics or Hegel lectures in Spanish could be useful, right? So or having somebody else give them in Spanish, right, for your students. Chinese, Arabic, again, edX has all these other languages. So there are different approaches. Some students learn better with this content. They like that guy better. So the internet can be more multivalent than you probably can, right? You probably can't speak multiple languages at once. Help is on the way, okay? Do I need to do anything? Are we going to? Okay. So that's one thing. So think about the mess, and also now think about how to be multivalent. So there are a couple ways to do this. So first of all, if you want to develop content for students, my suggestion is don't do the video thing. Because, right, there's that guy at the Crash Course guy who has the animators and the millions of dollars from Bill Gates or Harvard behind him, right? You don't have those kinds of resources. Your video is probably going to be less interesting. If you're going to do it, make it short. Don't make it 50 minutes, et cetera. But my suggestion is to do podcasts or something with chapters, because students learn by analogy. So all of us do this, right? So I use soccer analogies because that's the game that I grew up with, right? So my soccer students are very happy. They understand I understand what he's talking about. And the baseball students are like, I'm totally confused because I don't speak soccer. So if I switch to baseball, what happens? Now my soccer students are confused. So I'm going to switch to cooking because the cooking kids are like, no, now the right. So you can only do one at a time. So what most of us do is we give a couple of examples and then we teach to the middle. We say, well, whose heads are nodding? It's okay. Let's move on. Or you're still confused? Come see me later. I'm sorry, right? But a podcast allows you to do lots of different of these things at once. That looks like an ad I want to skip, right? Hang on. So here's what I'm going to show you. So here we go. So iTunes. So this is my old talk on the blues that I used to do in class.
You'll notice there is something musical to
So I'm
mark
going to
every
teach you a
new
12-bar
chorus, and that something different
music class.
happens every chorus.
12-bar blues.
I'll count it
We're
for
going to
you.
count to 12.
2, 3, 4,
4 units.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Here comes the end, right?
11,
Almost the 12.
12. New chorus. 1,
Back to the beginning. Okay?
2,
So
3.
I would do this, and I'd say, okay, so I'm
4,
going to teach how to do 12-bar blues. And I would
5.
do a couple of examples, and I'd see how many heads were nodding, and people are going, what's he talking about? Other people are going, oh, I played trumpet in high school. I know how the blues. I can count to 12. Blues are easy, right? So you're all at different places, right? So teach to the middle. You teach until most people have it. You move on. But in a podcast, I can do lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of examples that are different, because maybe your problem isn't that you don't like the blues. Maybe your problem is that you hate my example, right? Right? So how about this?
So where else in American pop music do you think we'll find the blues? Well, how about bluegrass?
This is also a 12-bar blues.
2, 3, 4, 5,
It's the blues.
6,
The
7,
music example changed.
8,
I went from
9,
soccer to baseball,
10, 11, 12, new chorus, 1.
right? So that's a 12-bar blues. So you could learn the blues by listening to bluegrass or by listening to Count Basie. And some of you are going, well, that was my problem. I just hated Count Basie. And others of you are going like, no, bluegrass. He's got to be kidding, right? How about James Brown? 1, 2, right? 3. It's the blues, right? Oh, right? So what I've done is I've changed the type of example. Does that make sense? So I've given you 35 ways to learn the blues. Do you need 35? Probably not. Some of you might need 4, some of you might need 5. Some of you might need 35. But the point is, I'm giving you 35 different types of examples. So what do you think students do when they do this? This is true of videos, by the way, too. How do students use your recorded lectures or videos? Do they watch the whole thing all the way through? No. They find the part that's confusing, and they watch it over and over and over and over again, right? So let's make it easier for them. I'm giving you a bunch of different examples. They're just going to pick the bit they like, and they're going to listen to the bluegrass bit over and over again until they get, right? Does that make sense? So don't make a video. Make something with chapters. So podcasts use the M4A format, and if you have GarageBand or you're a Mac, then you can just make, GarageBand actually works really well for this. But you can also do it with PowerPoint. Take a PowerPoint presentation, take one slide, one concept, duplicate it 35 times, and then label the slides with the type of analogy. Because you're going to talk about the same thing in 35 different ways. I'm going to explain thermodynamics to gardeners, to construction workers, to baseball players, right? Whatever, the analogies change, but in class, you'd only do a limited number, right? You'd only do 1 or 2 or 3. Now you can do 100. Does that make sense? You can actually create more paths into the material, and then you let the students choose what they want. Does that make sense? So that's a podcast or a talking PowerPoint. There's one other thing you can do. You can actually outsource the whole thing. Right, so one of my math professors at Goucher took this idea after this workshop and said, you know what? I'm always having students do problem sets, and then they don't have any conceptual understanding. So he gave them an assignment. in a 2-minute video, explain functions to your roommate, right? In a language that he will understand. So.
Hi, I'm Joe Fraction, and this is the Joe Fraction Show. On this episode, we'll be covering functions. A function is a special relationship between two values, where each input has exactly one output. A good application of functions is looking at the relationship between level of skill with an instrument and the level of chicks that you can get. See, try this. As his skill level is 1, he gets 1 chick. Hey Billy, how's that bass playing going?
I'm having a little trouble here, Joe. I'm not quite getting it.
Not to fear. With the base function, there's a y-intercept. So with 0 skill level, you get 2 bays.
Right, he's got it backwards. He can't, right? Wider
The
intercept.
guitar function here has a higher slope. So with a little amount of skill, you get a lot of girls.
Higher slope. More return. Okay? Okay, let's see.
Piano, on the other hand, is a negative slope, so you end up getting negative chicks.
Right. Okay. So basically, he's outsourced, right? He's crowdsourced his explanations, right? So he says, instead of having me give you 30 different ways to understand functions, he's let his students come up. So what you do is you do this, you get 30 different videos, 28 of them are lousy. You take the 2 best ones and you put them on the website for next year. And then next year, you get 28 more and you put the best 3 or 4. And so then you end up with a library system and then you label them. Here's one that's about how to get chicks. Here's one about cooking. Here's one about soccer, right? Whatever. So then students pick the analogy that speaks to them. Does that make sense? So, because the teaching bit is not about the content and how much you know, it's about finding the right ways to get between you and students, right? Pedagogy starts with what matters to your students. It ends with what matters to you. So you're trying to figure out, well, I'm giving you options for you to take control. Does that make sense? So again, there are lots of different ways to actually make that happen technically, but the technology allows you to do this. Yet none of this happens in class, right? So the naked bit is what happens in class, which is the relationship bit that's the face-to-face. But out of class, if I don't have to do the lecturing bit, I have a lot more time to do the interactive thing. Okay, so lots of examples about content. All right, data I'm going to skip. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about social proximity now. So what could you do, again, if the object is to create more relationships with students, to have students trust you, want to come to class, how can you make more time for that interrogation, that skepticism, that back and forth, all that stuff that we love so much? How can you use the technology to give you some more of that time? Right? How can we beat Einstein and make time? What could you do on social media that you don't have to now do in class? You can do it. Just make up something. What could you do on email instead of in class and save some time? Well, it's not a trick question. What? Say it again? Changes to course syllabi, dates, what I would call announcements. All of your announcements can now go online. You don't have to make any of them in class. Really? Think about it. I know what you're thinking, but they don't check their email, right? There's a couple of ways around, and this will work. I can get them to check their email. First of all, you do explain. Transparency works. When you tell students, right, this is why I'm doing it, this is how this works. When you get this thing called the JOB, they give you an email account, not your Gmail account. They give you their email account. And when the head of the company writes to you, you have to read it, or you get fired, right? This is called work. It's not called school. So this is a transferable work skill. You all want jobs. Checking your email is a job skill, and this is actually going to help. That doesn't actually work very well. I mean, it works a little bit. Works a little. The way that really works, hi, welcome to class. No, there's no syllabus here. The syllabus is online. No, you can't see it yet. I've hidden it. I'll make it available in exactly 55 minutes. It's on Canvas. It's on the course website. It's on wherever you put it. It will be unlocked in an hour. Right now, I want your attention because I need to change your life and tell you why this course is important. That's the first thing on the first day of class really actually matters for This course is going to be important. This one matters, right? And so, but it also stops the students from going through your syllabus while you're talking, right? So I'm not going to give you a syllabus. So never hand out a syllabus. Put the syllabus someplace students will get to it in an hour. If you have to hand it out by some weird state regulation, put it by the door in a box and then reveal that information later. But the better thing to do is to say, I will email you the syllabus in an hour, right? There's that email address. Oh, and by the way, so with the syllabus that's going to come to you via email, you have to check your email. There's also the link for the syllabus quiz, which is worth 3 points or 5 points, right? First day of class, there's a quiz. The syllabus quiz is due an hour before the next class. In fact, this is practice. There will always be an exam due an hour before every class. They'll be short. They'll be 5 minutes, 10 questions, right? Canvas allows you to do this easily. Just a couple of questions. So just make 10 questions up about your syllabus. Put them in Canvas. It automatically drops into your grade book. It's no more work. You can reuse it every year for the rest of your life, right? It's easy. Students will now check their email because they want to get the syllabus and they want to take the syllabus quiz, right? Now, if you don't want to do email, do it on Facebook, do it in Canvas. You could, but whatever you're going to do, that first thing that you do on the first day of class, that determines the pattern. So set it up. Say, this is what happens in my class. The information is all on Canvas. It's all on Twitter. It's all whatever. Here's the course website. But if you establish a pattern, then they'll do that every time. And then you could say, I'm not going to make announcements. And actually, they're okay with that. Because if I say to you, hey, everybody who's here, the midterm is now going to be Wednesday instead of Thursday. Tell your friends who aren't here. Is that fair? Fairness actually really matters. This is also true if you tell students like a tip for the test. So if you come to my office, you actually come to my office hours. I mean, I know that would be weird. But if you actually came to my office hours and I said, so you know what? Chapter 6 is going to be on the test. You really should probably, emphasize chapter 6. What's the first thing that happens? What is she going to do? Is she going to tell everyone? What format will she use? She'll post it on Facebook. Professor Bowen told me chapter 6 is the secret. And what's the real result of that? Of course, they'll all practice chapter 6. But the real problem is they now perceive you as unfair. Because you told her, not everybody. So the minute you do that, what should you do? If you make that mistake and you tell a student, yeah, that's probably something that's going to be on the test, what should you do? You should immediately post it on Facebook. Just so everybody knows, chapter 6 is a really important one. That's fair. We were talking in the last session. Students really care about fair. You will immediately be perceived as not being fair. Now, they might come for your office hours because they want to get some tips. And it's true. Actually, my daughter survived college this way. She realizes, like, Dad, how come she always knows what's going to be on the test? Her sorority sisters would say, how does she know what's going to be on the test? She says, they were so dumb, Dad. So you just go to class and you go to office hours and say, hey, what's going to be on the test? And most professors are stupid enough, they'll tell you. Because they're so lonely that nobody ever came to office hours. It's like, really? You're telling me this? It's like, have children. It's great. Right? But tips that you learn from your kids about how, so, she would, and she literally, she's like, everybody, she was always surprised that she knew what was going to be on the test. And so post those things on Facebook or some other way outside of class. Don't give it to selectively only the kids who are here. Social media is also a chance to show your passion. Data tells us that students learn more when they believe that you care about their learning. Notice I didn't say you had to actually care. The perception works, right? The perception, that's what they want to know, do they think you care? When you're on Facebook or Twitter and you say, hey, keep going, they perceive that you care more. They actually learn more. This is a pedagogy. They will learn more when you say, hey, how's it going? I know, keep working. I know this is hard, right? So this is a really useful thing to do in your social media. If you have a feed for your class. Timing matters here, right? Because remember, y'all were weird. You like school so much you're still here. That's not normal, right? Most people just want to graduate and leave. So you did all the reading. That's weird. You just said, yeah, this is interesting. Foucault, I'm going to read this. And they're going, what? Why are we reading this? How does this work? So a little encouragement at the point of, right? So when is that going to be? Is that going to be Thursday afternoon in class? No, it's Sunday night or Monday night or right the day before it's due. So most students are going to do their work the day before it's due. So the moment to send that little help about the problem set is Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock, right? So think about it. First generation student, what did I do on every problem set all the way through college? I work the problems in order every time. What happens if I got stuck on problem number 6? I stayed on problem number 6 because my mother told me to, right? She never got out of the 2nd grade, but she told me to do the problems in order, so I did them. So I got stuck. So guess what you can do? Send a text on Sunday afternoon that says, hey, if you get stuck on problem number 6, it's the hardest. Skip it. That would have changed my life. That would have changed. A text from the teacher or a post on Facebook on a Sunday afternoon that said, hey, problem number 6 is hard. If you get stuck, don't spend all day on problem number 6. Try number 7. Because I didn't have anybody to ask. So that transparency is disproportionately useful for first-generation students, right? It also shows that you care, but it also comes with the right timing, because I don't need that information in class. I'll have forgotten it. Don't put it on the syllabus. I'm not going to read it. I want to see it on Monday night, right, when I'm doing the problem set. You've also got a great way to do connections, right? Twitter was designed to be short and brief. So Twitter is about sharing, right? Facebook is about sharing. So when you go to the New York Times, there are little buttons so you can share. What's the #1 source of readership for the New York Times? Paper? Website? Facebook. Most of what people read in the New York Times was either emailed to them by some, right? They even have a most emailed list on the New York Times, or was posted on Facebook. And that's why people read it. People read what's in their Facebook feed, which is why Facebook is so important to elections now, right? That's where people get their news. So they're still reading the New York Times articles, they're just getting it through Facebook. So sharing, making connections is actually a really important thing that your students are doing. They understand this. Co-opt this for your class. So try this assignment. Once a week, I would like all of you to tweet something that relates to the course. Anything. Use the hashtag, my course, US, whatever, right? Make up a hashtag. And tweet something, and then you can pull them up in class and say, what are all the hashtags? What did we find this week? You'll be amazed, because some of it will be weird, and you'll go, wow, why is that kid posting a Seinfeld video about this psychology class? This happened, and I watched. It's like, oh my God, he totally understands this concept. But in 20 seconds, and how he found this 20-second Seinfeld clip that totally encapsulated, but right, they think in different ways than we do. But this way, you'll get a little window into their world in terms of how they're processing your content. So Twitter assignment is a way to help them make connections, though. So they're actually taking what's in your class and saying, where else does it apply? Because students are really confused. They really do think your class is like Las Vegas, right? What happens here stays here, right? That's kind of, right? And we kind of, so if you wanted to make connections, ask them to make connections. I talked about, introduce the readings. So again, you did all the readings, you understood that. Tuesday night when it's due on Wednesday, a little bit of encouragement that, hey, I know chapter 1 in Foucault is hard. Keep going. Chapter 2 gets better. Just kidding. But the point is that a little encouragement when they're doing it actually matters. One of my favorite stories is I did this at the University of Georgia, and a guy sends me an email a couple months later and says, I tried this thing. You said just go on Facebook the night before the exam. So I'm going to be on Facebook 9 to 10. I stretched. I went 10 to 11. I put the kids to bed. Now I'm here. I'm on the Facebook 10 to 11, the night before the midterm. He said he'd never had teaching evaluations like that in his whole life. It's like, oh my God, a professor who cares. I can't believe how generous you were with your time and blah, blah. An hour on Facebook, right? That perception of where they live and when you are, so timing matters. So don't introduce the readings at the end of class. Wait until Sunday afternoon when they're doing that kind of thing. And again, you have this perfect tool for this, when you post stuff and when they're going to read it. Community, students do better when they can share their work, when they have someone they can ask for help. You probably don't live in their dorms with them. Again, the kids who live at home, the commuter students, have a disadvantage, right? Living in the dorm, it turns out that the frat house has an advantage, right? Because there's somebody else who took, Astronomy 101 last year. Somebody has last year's test. Somebody can help you with the homework, or somebody else in your frat house is in the course, right? You're in the dorm, same advantage. If you're a commuter student and you're home alone and your parents didn't go to college, who's going to help you? So you're going to go online. So if you have a Facebook group for your course, or you have some kind of Canvas structure, the students can ask each other questions, you can build community. And there's a kicker. It also will reduce the amount of email that you get. That would be good, huh? So think about it. When a student sends you an email, I'm confused about thermodynamics. and you respond, what happens? The next student writes and says, I'm confused about kidneys. And you're just like, now you got the whole, now you're going to do email all night long. So when this first student writes to you, say, that's a great question. Why don't you post it in the Facebook group or post it on Canvas or your chat or whatever, Google, Hangout, whatever it is that you're going to use. The technology doesn't matter. Which platform doesn't matter. Post that question so everybody can see it. Then you can have a conversation with the student in chat on Facebook, but everybody can see it. Right? That's more fair. But it also means that people get used to that kind of exchange. And what happens when you go to sleep? They keep going. Now, I'm confused about thermodynamics, and now their friends will help them. You should get up in the morning and check Facebook to make sure they didn't veer off into the wrong direction. Right? You do have to kind of check this periodically. But this is actually what you want them to be doing. Right? This is the sitting around in the dining hall talking about Plato. Except they don't do it in the dining hall anymore. They do it on Facebook. Or they do it on Twitter, or they do it on, whatever they're using. LinkedIn is actually pretty safe. That's a good one to use. But you can build community. So in Canvas, you can do this. You can have group chat. Set up a board someplace that's public for your students to have this when they're not with you, because you're only with them a couple hours a week. And again, the commuter students, the first-gen students will all be more grateful for this. Then the other thing I think is really interesting about social media is that it allows you to demonstrate the power of slow thinking. We all know what fast thinking is because it's what presidential candidates and people in sports do, right? It's like, you just won the Super Bowl. How do you feel? Well, my amygdala's kind of acting up, and I'm probably in a bad emotional place to answer that question now. Nobody ever says that. They make up some bullshit, and it's like, wow, okay, that was news. So students are used to the, what's the answer? What's the answer? You can model that actually smart people don't do that. Smart people do the opposite. They say, that's interesting. I'm going to have to think about that. I may have to do more research. I'll get back to you later. Even if you know the answer. Think about it. Even if you know the answer to their question, what are you modeling when you always have the answer to their question? You're modeling that smart people must know the answer. I do this at medical schools all the time, and they go, yeah, because in rounds, the students went, I have to prove to them I know it. They know that you know more than they do. You're the doctor, right? What you want to prove to them is that you can learn new things, and that what really makes you smart is that you can process. So model your thinking. That's a great question. I'm going to have to do more research before I answer. I will email everybody later. I'll put something in the group. Does that make sense? Right? You actually build that community into your online so that you also are modeling what it means to not have to give me an answer now. I was involved in, got to be the earliest online discussion board in the 90s. It's a long time ago, right? In 1994. And we had students in the class. We did this online discussion. What we found is that some students contributed a lot in class. And other students didn't contribute at all online. And some students contribute a lot online. Turns out they were often different students, that some students just process more slowly. They don't want to wave their hand and give you the answer. They want to think about it. Then they write something really smart online. And so there were just different ways of responding and thinking. And so people said, but they're all going to have to learn how to talk in the boardroom. I said, no, they're not. Some people process at different. This is a chance to let everybody process at their own speed. Give them two options. If you do in-class discussion, that's great. But also do online discussion. Let them reflect and think more slowly. All right? Okay. And of course, I'm going to suggest virtual office hours. Just be online the night before the test. It's a great way to have students believe that you really exist. You should know this. I'm not going to go through this, but find a college student to help you. Page profile group. They don't have to be your friends. They can be in a group and not be seeing your high school pictures, right? And if you have a mother like mine, my 91-year-old mother, still posting pictures of me in middle school, it's like, no, stop. But those shorts were an embarrassment then. I really don't want to see them again. But there are lots of ways you can do this. But it does actually. And that data is old about how many hours, but it does. They do use this. I did have somebody do a study based upon this idea to find that Facebook study groups did actually improve their final course grade. Students who were in had the Facebook study groups did a half grade better. So you also find out stuff about your students. Students will post stuff they'd never say to you in person. So this is from a women's studies course. Students having trouble thinking about a paper, and admits in week 10. Doesn't know what to write about for her paper. And then somebody says, what about, childcare glass ceiling? And she says, what's a glass ceiling? You probably would want to know this if this is week 10 or 11 and students are still confused about it, right? So you find out stuff. This is their use of smartphones. This is old data, 2014. Smartphone has now become the academic device of choice, which is why they don't want to read. Print is too small because they're using a phone. You know, it's like, so that's why they want to watch a video. They're looking for, the print is too small. So, all right, I talked a little bit about games in the other session. I'm going to do, so online exams. So let me give you, you can do this quickly in your LMS. It gets students to prepare a bit more. So my suggestion is an online exam before every class. This is from my syllabus quiz, right? So you go online, look at my syllabus. Which of the following is not a learning goal? What number? Thank you. This is jazz history. My jazz history course. So fall in love is actually a learning outcome, because fall with somebody in some jazz figure, not somebody in class, but with some, right? Because think about it. If learning is about change is about that moment. Say, wait, I didn't used to like sushi. Now I like sushi. I changed. Wow, I can change. That's cool. I'd never heard of Thelonious Monk. Now I love him. That's cool, right? That's a change. I want them to have that moment where they think about, what does it mean that you didn't know something and now you not just know it, you love it. So people say, well, how do you assess that? Well, just tell me what you fell in love with at the end of the class on the final exam. And telling me how many albums Thelonious Monk recorded is not going to convince me. Tell me what you love about Thelonious Monk, right? There are ways, and always have higher standards than your assessments can actually measure. Don't worry about what you can assess. If you can assess it, that's great. You need to assess something. But I'd much rather you have high standards and really want them to be able to fall in love and not know how quite to measure it than, I'm going to measure the easy stuff and that's what I'll teach too, right? Much better to have this out of sync. So how about number 6? Is that a learning goal for my class? Not only is it a learning goal, I'm even going to tell you what's on my final exam, on the first day of class. What's on my final exam? Take a piece of paper out, write down 10 genres in jazz history. You can pick 10 of the ones we talked about. For each of those, write down one question that scholars have not yet asked. Then you can go. For each one for each genre, one question that scholars have not yet asked about that genre. Easy? Okay, it's a kicker. I'm interested in quality, not just, is it a unique question? So if you say, I could do a taxonomy of bebop saxophonists by shoe size. That is a new question. No one has written a book on classifying saxophonists by shoe size, because those things are not related. It's a bad question. So asking better questions, right? So I'm going to tell you from the get-go what we're trying to accomplish here. So the answer is actually 2, I think. Yes, 2 is the answer, although now I should rethink that maybe, but yes. Okay, so this is what we know about the learning. This is a great book, Make It Stick. I highly recommend it. This is what we know about the brain in the last couple of years. You learn what matters to you. This is also on the handout. You don't have to write it down. Knowledge is necessary but not sufficient, right? There is content that's required for thinking, but it's more than that. Testing is good. Retrieval is essential. It's the stakes that are the problem. You just don't want high stakes. So midterm and final is actually a very poor structure. You want a video game structure. You want lots of little tests. That's what a video game is. Lots of little assessments, lots of levels. Elaboration is good. Abstracting is good. Failure is essential for learning. Do you give your students an opportunity to fail? Hopefully in class so you can pick them up. And then interleaving. Do you have them practice in various ways and come at things from different angles? So this is the subject of my next book due out in January. This is the Teaching Naked Techniques, TNT, get it? So add some TNT to your teaching. So content, you all are teaching content. We all start here. This is where faculty start. This is where students start, on the outside, right? They want to get in here, but they don't start there. So these are the things that this is on the list of things we just talked about. These are the things that how the brain works. What motivates you? You got to understand that. What's the first exposure? What do I think? Because do I get nervous when I just hear about your subject? Lots of recall, lots of retrieval. Elaboration. So I have students right before every class. I use index cards before every class. Complication. My classroom always includes a surprise. Something you didn't expect is going to happen. You're going to have to do something you didn't expect. Then reflection. Making sense. How did you prepare for class? How did you prepare for the midterm? How could you do differently? How could you prepare differently? I don't put grades on anything. I put grades on the LMS, and I hide them. When I give feedback, feedback and grades are different. If you want students to read your feedback, don't mix it up with a grade. Grades are online. You can see them in an hour. Feedback is at your desk. Read it in class. So I always hand back things in class and make the students do it in class. You know why you don't do it in class normally? Well, you got time for other things, right? I just made more time by putting your videos outside of the class. But if there's a grade on it, people start to cry, and you don't want to watch them cry. So you send them home, and they cry in the elevator, right? So if you take the grades off it, they won't cry as much. But they'll read the feedback, and then they'll write a little reflection paper, or they'll do some, I call them cognitive wrappers. You can find it online at teachingnaked.com. You can find so there's a reflection exercise. So that's what I do for every class. I think about this as a design process, not just my content. You'll have content, but that's not the teaching bit. The teaching bit's on the outside. All right, so let's see if the internet is working. You know, I'll skip this one because I talk too much today, so I'm going to skip my clicker thing. I'm going to skip. I'm not going to do that either. I'm going to show you some pictures, and then we'll end. There we go. Okay. Hit me. There we go. Naked classrooms. So hang on. Let's go back to that one. All right. So these are naked classrooms. So this one is not terribly naked. This one is a little more traditional. The idea is to maximize your interaction with students, to use the technology outside of the classroom, push the delivery and some of that stuff outside so you have more time for the interaction, getting to know your students inside. So lots of colleges have now adopted this. This is at Emory. I invented about 10 years ago. This is what I call the E-Nook, right? So there's no podium in my classrooms. There's none of that stuff. There's just this thing that's over on the side of the wall. You can plug in a computer if you want. That's all it has in it. My faculty call this the diaper changing station. So it goes on the wall. But so like it's a conference room, but notice the glass. Glass apparently is the new stucco or the new classrooms that you can see in, you can write on the walls. This is a classroom I took that looked a little bit like this, only it was raked at SMU, where I was a few years ago. Notice we left the raking because it was cheap. I just replaced the furniture with movable, these node chairs. We did put rubber stoppers here so students couldn't launch themselves into the next row, right? Because they have wheels, they turn around. Notice the 2 cup holders, because it's America, 2 cup holders, right? So, but then I could say get into groups of 3, and students can just do that, get into groups. This is going to be more conducive to having students just talk to each other. This is at Bowling Green. So this is like that wall, only you can write on it, right? You can write on all the walls. It's a special paint that you put on, and then so I would have you get up and do things. Notice the chairs again, or the desks are connected, so again, there's no normal here. You don't have to put the room back together at the end of class, right? You just have right, because everybody's going to sit, you're going to set it up however you like. These are in the back of the classroom, so they're little white boards that you can detach, and you can come put them here, and we can work on a project and go hang them back up. So that's one model. This is at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. This is a 100-seat Chemistry 101 classroom. There's no lecture, there's no front, there's no back. The students are in groups of 4. Every group of 4 has a whiteboard and a computer. People are assigned tasks. So one week you're the researcher, one week you're the scribe, whatever. And so they doubled retention into Chemistry 102 by getting rid of lectures. And they just have, so it's all project-based. Right? You can't write on the walls, but everybody gets a whiteboard. The whiteboards are on wheels. You're in groups of 4. This is a 100-seat classroom for the sciences. This is at a liberal arts college that I'm forgetting at the moment, but it'll come to me. So this is interesting. This is the sofa couch, right? So there's 2 things here. So this is a group, the inner group and the outer group, right? So when you're doing discussion, you can't have a discussion with 20 people, but you can have with 10. So the 10 people in the middle sit in the inside, they discuss. The 10 people on the outside watch and then say, well, what was really effective, what was not so effective? Then they switch places and they move around. So that's another radically different type of classroom. Also, all of the screens at this college have numbers on them. So they all have 4-digit Bluetooth code, like when you pair a thing with your phone. So any device on campus can project on any screen on campus. Put in the 4-number Bluetooth code, you can now take over the screen. So students can all have that option. So that's a kind of a cool technology too. Somewhere in South Carolina. So this is the new smart classrooms that have 9 people is apparently the magic number. So there are 3 computers, three groups of 3. Every table has, right, there's glass you can write on there, you can project on the screen, and you've got lots of these 9. So you can have people working in groups. But you're not going to lecture in a group like this. This is designed to prevent you from doing that. Okay, so we got new technology. That's the news. The good news is thinking just became more important. Yay us. We teach thinking. Bad news, course design just got more important, right? Because just professing went down in value. Just knowing more is not as important. Other good news, integration became more important. If you're going to have people on a campus like this and spend all this money on infrastructure, you have to leverage it for something. It can't just be, we do what they do online, only it costs more. Right? It has to be somehow better. So my suggestion is that you really think about teaching, the noble art, as being an intellectual superhero for your students. That's what you really do. You even get to wear the cape once a year at graduation, right? Think of that as your superhero cape. Because what you're modeling is students come to class to see you as a human being think. They actually don't care much about your discipline. You know how students choose a major? Who teaches the intro course that they liked the most? They like you, right? But they're watching you think. So when you say, here are the answers, oh, smart people know the answers. But the next time a student asks you a question, try this. That's a great question. I hadn't thought of it that way. You may have made me change my mind. Think of the power you've handed to that student. You had an idea that changed, but you've also modeled what it means to be smart. Smart is the ability to change your mind. Students have never seen anybody change their mind, right? Their priest, their rabbi, their parents, presidential candidates, right? They may never have seen it, right? We call that wishy-washy, you're not supposed to change your mind, right? Yes, you are. Changing your mind is the mark of being smart. When new information is presented, you ponder, you think. So students haven't ever seen that. So that's what the naked class should be about, the chance to model what it means to be a thinker for students. So be a superhero, be a role model as a thinker. They really do look up to you. You can't imagine, students really, you have degrees I've never heard of. You're like amazing. They believe that about you. It's true. And what you do, right, you don't do for the money. You do it to change lives. So this is hard. What we did today is really hard. It's a lot harder than just knowing more than your students. So I thank you and commend you for what you do. It matters. And just insist that you think about being an intellectual superhero for your students. Be an intellectual role model. That's really what you're here to do. Change a mind. Feel good about what you do. Thanks very much.